know some of y'all don't want to be seen, but I need to at least see the top of your head and not your ceiling fan. Okay. There we go. All right, so I'm going to start sharing. Everybody should be in Canvas, and I have to start the video before I can do Canvas. Okay, drop that down. Okay, hopefully everybody's good today. After yesterday's news, we're all just glad to be still among the land of the living. And that Winder is just like the next county to me. So things are getting a little bit too close to home. I'm grateful that all of you all are here and all is well. All right, so we should be looking at species interactions. All right, I believe we touched on it last class, but I just want to go through it quickly again so that we have a better understanding of what we're going to do today. All right, so we've been talking about biomes, and let me just go back just real quick. All right, everybody should have turned in the habitat study. That's one of the assignments that's due. All right, so we've been talking about roles in our ecosystem. And so we're going to give names to specific roles and what people are doing in the ecosystem. Okay, because not only do we have roles, but there are relationships. Okay, so we talked about roles. Your niche is your job in your habitat, but there are organisms that have a very specialized relationship with one another. And just to quote Mufasa, that in the circle of life, and they talk about it as a circle, like this picture here is a circle, because if you remove that organism from that circle, then the circle breaks. And so there's a direct effect on our ecosystem if that organism is not doing what it normally does, or it's not having the relationship that it normally has. Okay, so they give this example here that bees collect nectar and convert it into honey. That's what it does. That's its niche. Okay, and then the bee spreads the pollen from one flower to another. Now, what happens is where it's collecting the honey from, and you all know what pollen is, and some of y'all probably allergic to it, and that's that yellow stuff that falls all over your cars and your house and everything else. But it also sticks to the bee. So his little fur is collecting pollen while he's messing with the flower. Okay, and the and pollen is the male part of the flower. So he's transferring the male seeds from the flower to the female part of the flower. Every time the bee goes on, and that's what the story of the birds and the bees is really all about, is that the bee is carrying the pollen, which is the reproductive cell for the male, to the female part of the flower, and it drops it off. And that's how fertilization happens in most flowers. And so they are dependent on this relationship. Okay, so down here it says both species benefit from this interaction. The bee is getting food and the flower is being pollinated or fertilized. Okay, so that's a positive interaction. We're going to look at not all interactions are positive and not all interactions are beneficial. All right, so we're going to look at this term symbiosis. And symbiosis means, and you need to write this down or know this vocabulary word. All right, symbiosis means living together and describes a close relationship between two species. The interaction between organisms within an ecosystem is usually long-term and it can be positive, and it's going to be represented by a plus sign, or negative, um, represented by a negative sign, or neutral, represented by 0, meaning that it doesn't do them one, it's not positive or negative, they're just there. Okay, so that's important for you to know that, that what symbiosis means. All right, so we're going to look at a couple of types of symbiosis. And there are two general categories: obligate. And so the cartoon here is telling you what obligate is. An obligate is when two organisms are in a relationship because they cannot survive with each other. They are obligated to work together. Okay. And then you have the other one, of facilitative symbiosis, facultative. I don't say that right. Facultative symbiosis. And that's by choice. They choose to be in this relationship, which is what most of us do. We choose to be in a relationship. Although obligative, you might say that that's the relationship you have in your house, that you are obligated to be there until you're old enough to leave. So that is the relationship that you have there with your parents and your brothers and sisters. You don't have a choice. Okay. All right, then we're going to look at these 5 types of relationships here, and we're going to look at them specifically. And this is where you're going to do your project. Okay. Now, again, we had pluses and minuses up at the top. So we can divide these 5 relationships into which ones are positive and which ones are negative. And so we're going to define them in just a sec. Let me see. I need to admit some folks. Hold on. And folks, that's the other thing to being on time for class, is that if I start, um, it may be sitting a minute waiting to get in because I got to stop to acknowledge that there are people waiting. So please try to be on time so that you're not only, I don't have to stop, but you also got the beginning of the lesson. All right, so for those who I just admitted, we are in Canvas. We're looking at species interactions. All right, so um, of those 5, predation, and these are the headings. We're going to talk about that there are always, in a relationship, there's always 2. So we're going to talk about some of these have special names for the 2 people in the relationship. All right, the positive ones are going to be mutualism and commensalism. And the negative, and that means that they're doing something good for each other, or nobody's hurt. On the negative side, we have predation, competition, and parasitism. So you need to make sure that you know which ones are good, which ones are negative. And again, we're going to watch this video and they'll talk about each of these. And then down here to the bottom, I'm going to ask you to do that. Instead of doing those columns like that, I want you to do this chart that they have at the bottom of the page, so that you it shows you that there are 2 individuals in the relationship, and we are always going to call them species A and species B. So species A is helped and species B may not be helped and may actually be harmed, or they may not care at all. That's what the 0 is, the neutral. They don't care at all. All right, so we're going to go up here and watch this video.
This video, we're going to focus on the interactions between those populations, the interactions between the different species. The technical term for that is interspecific interactions. I like to just say interactions between species.
All right, I'm going to stop it there just so that you know we're looking at the hierarchy of an ecosystem. So we had organism, and then a group of organisms makes a population, and then there are several populations living in an area. So we have a ecosystem. So within the ecosystem, these different populations are going to interact and get along. Now, yesterday we looked at the 2 vocabulary words: interspecific and intraspecific. So he said we're looking at interspecific because we're looking at the different populations acting with each other. Intraspecific is where they're interacting with each other within the same population. Okay, so make sure you know those definitions. Okay. All right. All right. I just stopped to check on the chat there for a minute. All right. So I'm going to start the video back again. But that's why I was looking at the definitions up at the top. Community is that's a definition you should know. Populations sharing a habitat. They all live in the same area. Therefore, they have to develop relationships in order to get along in that area.
Now, the first one that is often thought about is the notion of competition. Competition. And this is when different populations, different species, are competing for the same resources. You can imagine a forest where you have different populations of plants that are competing for sunlight, that are competing for water, that are competing for nutrients in the soil. Even in this picture right over here, this is a picture of a community. All of these different populations of fish and other things, sea anemones, coral, they are sharing this same region. And many of them could be in competition with each other. They might be going after the same food, or they might be going after the same shelter someplace. And oftentimes, when people are talking about these interspecies or interspecific interactions, you'll see something like this, a minus slash minus, or a negative sign slash a negative sign. And that means that this type of interaction, when you have two species or two populations that are in competition with each other, the more that you have of one is going to have a negative effect on the other, and vice versa. If I'm a plant and if I'm in competition with another plant and that one's taking my light, and if there's more of it taking my light, that's going to have a negative impact on me and vice versa. If I'm in competition with you and we eat the same thing, the more of me that there's around eating your food, that's going to have a negative impact on you and vice versa. So the next form of interspecific is predation. Predation. This is when one population likes to eat another population. And you might often associate predation with pictures like this that you see on television shows, on documentaries. You see a cheetah hunting, a gazelle or a deer of some kind. Actually, it says right here it's a young bushback. And this is predation. But this is not the only form of predation. This picture here of the goat eating grass, this is also predation. It's not quite as bloody and as violent, but it is still predation because you have one species eating another species. In this case, you have this animal, the goat, that is eating the grass. And this type of predation, the specific type of predation, is called herbivory. Herbivory. But it is a type of predation. So we could say predation slash herbivory slash herbivory, which is a special case of predation. And you'll often see a plus slash minus. The more of, let's say, this species that you have, the species that is being eaten, it's going to benefit the predator, but the more of the predator that you have, it's going to have a negative effect on the actual prey. Now, the next types of interactions are ones where you have long-term, fairly intimate interactions. They are where you have organisms that oftentimes live with each other or even on each other. And this general term of organisms that have these long-term intimate interactions is symbiosis. Symbiosis. Now, in everyday language, when people talk about symbiosis, they're often talking about organisms that really benefit each other. But technically, symbiosis isn't just about benefiting each other. It could be that they're even hurting each other in some way, or that maybe one benefits while the other one really doesn't care. And so there's several types of symbiosis. The first that we could talk about is parasitism. Parasitism. And this looks a lot like predation, where the more the more the parasite benefits, the more of the host that there is, but the host is actually hurt by the parasite. And there's all sorts of examples of parasitism. We have right over here a zoomed in picture of a louse. So why is this parasitism? Well, if this louse, I should say, this parasitism, call this right, the louse here a parasite, parasitism, and this benefits by living in your hair because that's where it gets its food from. It can lay, or living on your scalp, it gets your food by sucking your blood. It can also lay eggs in your hair. In some ways, you can use as shelter from the rest of the environment. But it's negative for you. It will make you itchy. It is taking your blood. It is uncomfortable. And so, parasitism, once again, it's good for the parasite, just like predation is good for the predator, but not so good for the host in the case of parasitism. Now, you have another situation where it is benefiting both sides, and that is called mutualism. Mutualism. This is where both sides benefit. And oftentimes, when people talk about symbiosis, they're really talking about mutualism, which is a specific type of symbiosis where both species, where both animals, organisms benefit. They don't have to just be animals. This is an example of mutualism right here. See, this is mutualism, where you have a clownfish living within a sea anemone. The sea anemone is providing the clownfish shelter, while the clownfish is keeping away other fish that might eat that sea anemone. So they are both benefiting from that interaction, and so that is mutualism. Now you have another category where one species is benefiting and the other one is maybe a little bit more indifferent. So one species is benefiting and then the other one, well, maybe it is a little bit indifferent. And we call that commensalism. Commensalism. And once again, there's many examples of commensalism. This right here is a picture of bacteria living on your skin. And you do have bacteria living on your skin right now, except it's actually, well, oftentimes it's a good thing. Sometimes it's mutualism, that it's providing protection from harmful bacteria, but sometimes the bacteria is surely benefiting. It's living off of nutrients on your skin. The skin is its habitat, but well, oftentimes it doesn't really have an impact on you. Now, commensalism, oftentimes the more that we study it and the more that we understand it, we realize that actually maybe the host actually is benefiting, in which it is mutualism, or maybe the host actually is getting hurt, in which case it is parasitism. So oftentimes commensalism isn't completely neutral for the host. It could go either way. And so these are
Okay, I don't know why it stopped so abruptly, but it did. But I do want to go back. Let me see if I can get this to
this
go.
video, we're going to focus on the interactions between those
Let me
populations.
see
The
if I
interactions
can.
surely benefiting. It's living on it, and the more that we understand it, we realize that actually maybe the host actually is benefiting, in which it is mutualism, or maybe the host actually is getting hurt, in which case it is parasitism. So oftentimes commensalism isn't completely neutral for the host. It could go either way.
Okay, just let me get it. What I was trying to do is get it to come back up to the top. All right, so what you needed to have gotten out of that is what um what are the relationships and exactly who is benefited and who is not. So, and then again, we're going to want to use these plus and minus signs. Your chart used a 0 instead of a question mark. He did a question mark because sometimes, um, like you said, it, say for example, sometimes the bacteria on your skin isn't going to bother you. Other times it might actually cause a rash, so that'll irritate you. So that may not be a good thing. Okay, so then in that case, you can put a minus sign there. But other than that, if it's there and there's, like you said, there's bacteria there all the time, sometimes it's they're, eating things that shouldn't be on your skin. So it doesn't bother you at all. So, all right. We're going to ignore this because apparently they're taking this section out, but this is where I'm going to give you an activity to do. So what we want to do again is to make sure that you've defined what is symbiotic relationship. You need to know that these interactions happen in our ecosystems. And they happen because one organism is trying to stay healthy. Okay, so always a need for food or some type of protective relationship going on with these symbiotic relationships. Now, they've divided it. Um, he divided this into, so while we had these up here, all of these up here, he had predation and competition separate to the three symbiotic relations, which were parasitism, mutualism, and commensalism. And that's because those are always negative situations. So they're good. There's always, again, there's two individuals in the relationship. So predation is the relationship. And the names of the two species, you have a predator and you have a prey. Okay, this relationship is always good for the predator, never good for the prey. The prey usually dies. Competition. Competition also can be not so bad in that you might not die from this, but you might have to leave town. If you're constantly competing in nature with the other organisms, and even in your house sometimes, if you're always competing for the same space or the same food, you decide I'm going to eat something else or I'm going to go somewhere else. So you move. So that's a negative situation. You leave the environment that you're in and go somewhere else so that you're not in competition. So those two are usually a negative situation. Okay, what we're going to look at specifically in the project that you're going to do is the other three. All right, so we're going to specifically look at mutualism, commensalism, and parasitism. And again, there's two individuals in the relationship. Commensalism, as he said, there's a plus sign, so one organism is benefiting. The other one could care less. Okay, they're there, but they're not there. And mutualism is like you scrub my back, I'll wash yours. They do something for each other, so they're both happy. And parasitism um, can be negative because parasites don't want to kill the host. So here again, we have the parasite and we have a host. So they have names. So the parasite is feeding off of the host, and it doesn't usually feed to the point of killing you, but it can feed to the point of um, causing you to be weak and then creating other diseases. So that's why it's a zero. It can turn negative, but usually a lot of times you might have a parasite and you don't even know you have the parasite because while they're feeding, they're not always noticeable until it gets until the condition gets really bad. And then you start having symptoms. Okay. All right, so you should be able to click on the next thing to get to the assignment. All right, so this is your assignment. I'm going to let you work on this for the rest of class. And I don't want you to pick the ones that you just saw in the video, but you are to pick one. So you're not doing all three. You're not doing mutualism, commensalism, and parasitism. Pick one. Okay, select one of those. And then you're going to do some research. You're going to find two organisms that have this type of relationship. And again, don't pick the bee, don't pick the louse, don't pick the sea anemone. Okay, pick something else. All right. And then you're going to answer these questions. So this is a research project. This is not a one and done activity. Okay, notice it's got 30 points, so you got to spend a little time with it. All right, so first of all, you want to pick the two organisms and say what kind of relationship they have. Why did you pick them? All right, do a little research about them, meaning where are we going to find them? What environment are we going to find them in? And what exactly is their relationship? Okay. Explain what they are doing for each other or how they're helping, how they're hurting each other, whichever one that you pick. Then you want to analyze the relationship in terms of, in other words, define it in terms of exactly what they do. So if you pick commensalism, explain how one is helpful and the other one is not harmed. Okay. Or if you pick mutualism, explain exactly what it is they are doing for each other, why that's important. Parasitism, explain which one is the parasite, which one is the host. With gathering data, you can include pictures here. You can talk about how they affect, and 4 and 5 kind of go together. How is what have studies shown about this relationship? How does it impact the ecosystem? So like I said, 4 and 5 kind of go together. In other words, when I spoke of the circle of life, how do these organisms, even in their relationship, affect the whole ecosystem that they live in? If they live in the ocean, what effect does it have on other aquatic organisms? If they're living in another animal, how does that affect the other animals in the community? How does that affect, what is the impact? And if humans are involved, um, if it decreases our food supply, or if it's something that lives in us, how are we impacted by this relationship? Um, I, and I told you can't use the birds and the flower, but if that relationship didn't happen, we wouldn't have honey. So that's our human impact. It will impact us because it if the flowers aren't pollinated, then the flowers don't make honey, then we don't get honey either. Okay. So the bees will not be making honey if all the flowers die. Okay. Because they can't get the nectar to make the honey. So that would be an example of human impact. All right. So again, include pictures. So you definitely need to have a picture of both species in the thing. And they might, in your gathering world data, that might be a graph showing. He spoke of when you if there's too much of one species, then the other species declines in two of those relationships. If the other one is, and usually there's a chart when one species goes up, the other one goes down, and then it might be where they don't have food for a while. So that gives the other one a chance to go up. So you might have that up and down graph that shows what happens in their environment when um, the relationship changes. Okay, you need to make sure that and then number 8 should be down to make sure you cite your references. Summarize what you feel in general, what the report should be about. In conclusion, I feel that this is an important relationship because, all right, or the ecosystem needs this relationship because, all right, and include your references. And your references is not Google. Okay, when you go to Google, they take you to a specific web page. That's the the thing that you need to post, not Google. That's a search engine. Okay. All right. Any questions? Any questions? Any questions? All right. So, um, think of one of so where do you start? Think of what one of your favorite organisms that you like. Think of um a spider, a snake, flowers. Think of 2 animals that you know about, or think of an animal that you know about, and then look that up and see what other relationship it's in. Okay, you can pick whichever organisms you like, and then you just have to research them to figure out do they fall in one of these 3 categories, and then identify that category, and then continue your research from there. Okay. All right, so your heading is types of symbiotic relationships, and specifically your subheading would be whatever um, organism you pick, and then identify what kind of relationship we have. Yes, it's an essay form. Um, I would like for you to kind of break it up a little bit so that it's obvious. You don't have to say step 1, but you do have to have a title. So step 1 really is your title. What are who are you studying and which one of the relationships you're studying. Then you want to have maybe a paragraph that says your background information. Um, and really the paragraph can have your background information and your analysis of the two organisms in relationship to commensalism. Why do you feel like their relationship is whichever topic you pick? So that's what that's saying. Okay, so that part of it is essay, gathering the data. Again, however you gather the data, it might be a chart, it might be a graph. I guess definitely the human impact part or the um, impact on your ecosystem is a paragraph, and then you're in pictures. Okay, you can do a pig, you can do I see dog. Um, if it's I see snake. Um, well, symbiosis is general heading. Just know that symbiosis is a general heading. It refers to a relationship. And then we want to pick which kind of relationship we're looking at. So if you're doing the snake is having a kind of relationship. Most of the time, the snake is probably not going to be one of these because snake is going to eat you and you're dead. So that's predator prey. So I don't know that I would use a snake necessarily as my example. So we're not trying to do predator prey and we're not trying to do competition. We're specifically trying to do commensalism, mutualism, and parasitism. Okay. So again, if you a dog, again, the dog and the ticks and fleas, that was not the example, so that's fair game. Um, somebody did something with a turtle in my last class. So let me see if you figure out what the turtle is doing for society. So yeah, so whichever you can do it as Google Slides if you wish. That's fine. That's when you do it as Google Slides, make sure when you finish, save it as docs because I don't know that you can upload um, the slides, but you can upload a Google Doc presentation. So do it as slides and then save it as a document that you can upload. Okay. Any other questions? All right, so as you go ahead and get started. Um, as you go through, if you have any other questions, I'm here. I'm going to stop sharing because I need to do attendance. But if you have questions, definitely put them in the chat. I think I said this earlier that if you have any outstanding assignments, if you finish and I don't think you'll finish this early. Notice that this is not due until next class. So I'm giving you more than a minute, not even next class, you have next week. Okay. But definitely anything that's after that is late. So this is something that can be done between now and next class. But you have until the 12th to get it done. It can be both. It can be both. It can be either one. It can be an essay, so essay form is fine. And a PowerPoint is also fine. So yes, you must have pictures. That is part of the grade. You must have pictures. If nothing else, you want a picture of the two species that you are talking about. But you can have other pictures as far as gathering data that show exactly what they're doing in the ecosystem. Yes, you can do text entry. I don't know if text entry will necessarily work because you have to include pictures, but so that might definitely just be an uploaded file. Okay, so because pictures are included, text entry might not be the best choice. So do it as a file that you've saved and upload. And if you do it early enough, I'll let you know whether it worked or not. All right. And I see some people going off camera. Don't leave. You should be working. You're using the rest of the time to get your work done. So don't leave. Again, start by selecting the two organisms. Once you've selected two organisms, then you want to define what kind of relationship they have, and then you want to describe what it is they're doing that's so helpful to one another or harmful to one another, and then explain how that affects the ecosystem. Okay? All right, I want to get this attendance done.
When is this due? Like, when is the exact date?
The exact date is September 12th. I would like for you to be finished with it by Tuesday. Your next class is Tuesday, the 10th. So I'd like for it to be finished by then, but you have until the 12th. Okay? All right. And again, don't sign out. You need to stay in class. I see somebody left. And they might have left too soon because if you leave now, I haven't done attendance yet. And I won't remember who was here. So stay logged in and use this time to work on your assignment. And the other reason why you should work on it now is if you run into a question, I can answer it now. All right, I think that might have been Jaquise who left us. All right, Lucas, you haven't had your camera on all periods, so I don't know that you're really here. You're logged in, but I don't know that you're here. Mm. All right, everybody doing okay? No questions? Everybody has selected their two species. You've identified what kind of organism they are. When I say what kind of organism, I mean, are they commensalism? Remember, you only have to do one type. You're doing commensalism, or you're doing mutualism, or you are doing parasitism. You're not doing all three. You need two organisms that fit under one of those three headings. So you can describe what each does individually and then what they do for each other. Tree and a bird is good. Yes. So you need to explain what identify the bird, not just and folks, it can't be in general. So name a specific species of bird. Jayla, name a specific species of bird and the specific species of tree that they are having their relationship with, not birds in general and trees in general. What one bird are you talking about? What one kind of tree are they existing in? And why is that a special relationship? And that goes for everybody. It can't be a general situation. You have to name the species of each that are in the relationship. All right, so we got about 5 more minutes left to class. Any questions? Any questions? Any questions? All right. Anybody need some clarity on what you have picked? Um, Aiden, as far as the dog is, what breed of dog are you talking about? Is it a hound, a hot dog, collie? Name the kind of dog you're talking about. Okay. So then there's a specific organism that's going to just like golden retrievers. And I would start my research on the golden retriever and what organisms tend to be in relationship with that dog. And it can't be you, or it could be. It could be you. You have to explain the right relationship. And you can explain that. You can go and explain if it says three-part, explain what that means. Are you, Aiden, are you saying that's three parts for the golden retriever, or are you asking our general question? Yes, there's three parts, but you only need to address one. So is your research saying that there's three parts for the golden retriever? You keep saying it. What's it? So pick one. You don't want all three parts. You want to pick one. All right, you all have a good day. I'll see you next class. Have a good weekend.
You two have a great day.
Thank you.